Okay, thanks everyone for joining this webinar on HR Analytics hosted by the Information Lab. For those of you who do not know our company, we are a global license reseller and consultancy company focusing on just two technologies, Tableau and Alteryx, one of which we'll come on to a little bit later on. Now, this session is run by Adi McRae, who is our data school consultant, and myself, Josh Henderson, who is account manager for the company. Any questions that you'd like to ask, please write them in the Q&A panel, and we'll cover some of these off at the end. So the agenda today is as follows. So we'll cover a little bit about what Tableau is. Adi will go through how to connect to data, blend data sets together, and show a single source of the truth. How to visualize and spot correlations. Go through some examples of HR dashboards, and Adi will talk about her experience on placements. And how to learn more. It is a capital mistake to theorize before one has data. We live in a world which traditionally made business decisions on gut instinct and disparate information. Now, the outcome of this usually means ill-informed decisions, as people are, well, people. We are not built to interpret large amounts of data or perform complex tasks. To add to that, when we do, we usually add our own interpretation and unconscious biases. And no, this is not a new quote. It's actually from 1891. Well, not exactly. It's actually from Sherlock Holmes. So why are we here? There are three main factors that have brought us here. We know and hear that data is everywhere. The growth and acceleration that we've seen in the last 15 years has fundamentally changed how the world works. The advancements in technology has meant two things. One, the growth of systems which gather this data, your HR platforms, finance systems, and marketing campaigns. The second is what we'll cover today, which is the advancements in technology which enable people the ability to work with data. We've seen that traditionally HR is not a department which sees a lot of investment from a technology perspective. Most businesses invest in areas where they can clearly make or save money, like the finance teams, marketing, and operations. Now, what our clients have found is that they can justify an investment, but unfortunately when something bad has already happened, when they could have avoided this in the first place. So what are the costs of ineffective HR? Well, what we see is employee well-being goes down, which increases the damage on morale. Staff turnover goes up, which creates a toxic environment. And then reputational damage is the result. And as you know, the cycle is complete. Now, I do appreciate I'm preaching to the choir here, if not the Pope, but I think it's an important point to point out. So what solutions do we need? We need one which people can use. And I stress this, I mean people, not technical analysts or IT, one which the regular business user can operate to their own benefit. A solution which can combine different data sources to give an overall source of the truth. One which can see problematic outliers and trends. A solution which is secure and confidential to all of its users. And one which tells a story and gives context about the overall situation. We know and passionately believe that the solution which meets these requirements is Tableau. And as one of the biggest Tableau partners in the world, it's our mission to empower organizations with this solution. Some of the people here will be familiar with the solution and some will not. Now, I'm not going to go through the history of the company. That's not the purpose of this call. The purpose of the call today is to show how the solution can be used and how you and your organization can benefit from it. For that, I will pass on to Amy McRae from our Data School team to show Tableau and share some of her experiences.
Great, thanks Josh. Hello everybody. It's great to be part of this webinar today, introducing people to a new tool that can fundamentally transform the way organizations work is always exciting. So I'm definitely excited to be sharing Tableau with you today. I've spent the last 6 months in the people teams of 2 different organizations, helping them begin their data journeys using Tableau. I'm going to reflect on that, of course, as we go along, but we'll kick off with a brief introduction to Tableau as a piece of software. Tableau is 2 things, a data exploration tool and a data visualization tool. It has a really accessible user interface. You don't have to do any coding or programming to make it work for us, though if you or your team have that expertise, you can definitely take more control over customizing what happens within Tableau. But right out of the box, it's a drag and drop system. If you want to create something, you drag it into a worksheet canvas and you drop it there. But briefly, before we dive in, let's take a quick look at the ways in which we can get data into Tableau. Lots of your people data might be held in dedicated databases, some of which Tableau can connect directly to and pull the data from. So we take a look on the left-hand side of my screen here in this blue panel. We've got a list of 5 of the most common databases, so SQL, Oracle, Amazon. We don't see your database here. Tableau's got a few more it can offer. So you can see, again, Amazon options, Google, Exasol. We have Oracle databases, SQL, SAP, Salesforce. So a lot of flexibility, a lot of options. But even if you don't see your database listed here, and that's quite common, all we need is an intermediate step where we're going to pull the data from its storage location into an Excel worksheet or a CSV, and we'll read that into Tableau. So you can see up in the top left here, I've got the options to connect through Microsoft Excel, text files, which would be CSVs, JSON, all those types of things. Again, lots of options. So let's get into it. I've got a pre-made people data set, mock data, of course, that I'm going to connect to. And I'm going to identify that just here. So you can see that this doesn't have that Excel icon, but actually it's the same type of file structure. It's just been transformed into a proprietary file that is optimized for use in Tableau. So let's select that and let's add that in. You can see straight away that Tableau is showing us what data we have. And like I said before, Tableau is designed to be user-friendly, to deliver as much meaning as possible with minimal user intervention. And that's clear here because you can see that beside the names of each field or each column, there are little icons. And those icons tell us what type of data we have. So we took a look at forename. That is a person's name. That's a text field. That ABC icon tells us that that's a text field within Tableau. If we look a little further down the list, this hash symbol tells us that pay is coming as a number. Our globe is for geographical data. And if we look a little further down, we can find that we have some dates here, and that's shown by the calendar icon. So this is Tableau being intelligent in reading in the data, but it doesn't always make the right call. So if we have a look at performance, score, and age, they're both coming in as text fields. But logically, and also more importantly from a data perspective, both performance score and age are actually numbers. But within Tableau, it's easy to fix this. So we don't need to go back to our source data and query another database or read the data in again. We're just going to fix that up right in Tableau. So let's go ahead and change from our ABC. Let's make that a whole number for both performance score and also for age. So we're set up now, minimal data problems, and those that we do have, we can solve quite easily. So let's get rid of the suspense, dive in, and generate some insights. So here we go. Our initial view, this blank canvas, that's what we're going to use to build our stuff. On the left-hand side, we've got where the data come in. And you can see that Tableau is identifying that in what's called dimensions and measures. And the blue dimensions, they're just things that draw headers in our charts. And the green measures, they're the things that Tableau uses to actually draw the axes. So it's going to become clear as I start to drag things into the view. So let's start dragging and dropping. In this imaginary scenario for my business, maybe I want to figure out how many employees I have. And I know that each employee has a unique ID, so all I'm going to do is drag it into the view and ask Tableau to count how many employees I've got. So let's go ahead and do that, and let's just make that slightly bigger for you all to see, or a lot bigger. Here we go. So 309 people in my business as a whole. Great. Or if I want to see how that number is split across the departments or the units in my business, well, again, that's contained in this field. I'm just going to drag and drop that into the view. And I create this kind of messy looking numerical table. It's acceptable-ish at the minute, but I don't have many values in it. Let's instead do what Tableau does best and make this more visual. So I'm going to make our first chart by dragging this up, dropping it into the rows. Super. So you've got a first look at the total number of people in the organization, and also the magnitude of the difference between the number of people in each of our different departments. So you can pick out straight away that production vastly outstrips the rest. We can make this look a bit more impressive. So let's sort the data from highest to lowest. Let's just get rid of the header, and instead of that, we're going to label each of these bars. So here we are in the raw data. But at a certain point when our business gets bigger, the raw numbers might not mean anything, but the proportions do. And again, Tableau is ready to take control of that for us. So we don't need to do any calculations. Tableau can do that. So let's have a table calculation. Let's have a percent of total. So again, you can see that 2/3 of our staff are in production. And we've got a rapid drop off across the rest of the business. So that's quick, it's easy, it's a smooth process. And what else might we want to look at? Well, this is a snapshot of the business, but maybe we want to look at the headcount over time. And we're going to do that now. So what I'm going to do is swap out the management unit. And I'm going to drop on the date of the report here. And I want the month of the report. And we're looking at our headcount over time. So let's just get rid of those messy labels for now. So you can see that we've got a little bit of fluctuation in our headcount, but nothing too extreme. Now, if I want to, again, get that proportion across the business back, I'm just going to grab my management unit. Again, I could put it on color here. I'm just going to put it on detail. And now I've got an individual line for each of my departments. Which department? Let's put those labels back on again. So very quickly, from the headcount figures alone, you can see that there's a huge degree of flexibility in this tool. In fact, it can almost be a little bit overwhelming how much potential there is here. So from the outset, my advice is always to think about the use cases, your business questions, your pain points first. That's what Tableau is here to help you with. And we're not limited to one data set in Tableau. We can connect many data sets together in a range of different ways. I'm going to look at a couple of those now. So let's think that in my imaginary company here, we've gone through a drive to help employee cohesiveness, to drive that team spirit. And we've created some social hubs with each employee being a member of one of the hubs. But the social hub data exists in a different place to the rest of my HR data. But actually that's okay, because we have identified in that social hub data each employee by their employee ID. So we're going to use that in Tableau to create a unified data set, just like this. So let's go back and set up this new connection. I know it's a text file or a CSV, so let's make that selection. And you can see, helpfully named file. I'm going to draw that in. And Tableau automatically thinks that I'm trying to join these tables together, which I am. So it's giving me this view. And I know that employee ID or employee number are the common fields here. So let's join that. Okay, perfect. So this is a really good example of solving problems in Tableau. So something's gone wrong here. We've got an exclamation mark. But Tableau is going to tell us exactly what's gone wrong, and then we're going to be able to fix it. So Tableau is saying here that, hey, look, you're trying to join these tables together, but you got one employee ID, that's text, and one employee number, that's a number. So Tableau's not happy with that. But if you remember, we can make the changes right inside Tableau. We don't have to go back to a database and run a new query. So let's do that and see how things change. So I'm going to change my employee number here to a string. There we go. So we've lost the exclamation mark. You can see everything in orange and yellow here. That's coming in from our social hub side of the join. And everything in blue on the right-hand side, that was our original HR data set. So without having to mess around with too much data prep or cleansing or going back to our source database, we're ready to figure out what's going on in our social hubs and answer our business questions, which is the most important thing. So let's figure out what's happening. Again, let's drag and drop. This time we're going to start with the social hub name. You can see we have all those names across the top. What great names for our social hubs. And let's take a look at how many of our employees are in each one of those hubs. Again, let's count the employee numbers. And let's work a sort on this. Okay, so first up, we can see that the allocation of employees across each of these social hubs isn't even. Now, that might be by design, but that's something that I might be going back to my social hub project manager and just asking that question. You can see that Sunburst as a group has a lot more people than Radar, Line, and the rest. The second thing that we can pick out is that we have null values in the data just here. And what that indicates is that some of our employees haven't been allocated to a social hub at all. So again, I'd be going back to my project manager and figuring out, hey, what's going on with these people? I want to add a little more value. That's what I've done by creating this join. I'm able to pull in fields from both sides of the table. So if I want to take a look at exactly where the mismatch in the numbers is, let's go back to my management unit and I'll drop it on color this time. Okay, so we can see as a tool for social cohesion, this isn't really working well. So if you look at our Radar group, that color of green is for production. So Radar as a social hub is only made of production staff. So they're not really by design socializing with anyone else. Sunburst is also problematic. So it's just production and sales in there. And it's bad news for our IT team because it is them exclusively that haven't been allocated to any of the social hubs. So another really good example of that quality control, would want to go back to our project manager and say, hey, what's going on? So quality assurance, quality control, easy checks using joins in Tableau. But joins aren't the only way that we can add data and mesh data together. Sometimes we're not looking at matching things up person to person. It might be at the department or the unit level, or even just across the entire business. Diversity targets, for example. You'll notice that in my original data set, I have gender just here, and I also have ethnicity. And I'm going to go ahead and use ethnicity here and bring in some data that references my imaginary company's diversity targets. So let's go ahead and set up a connection to that, which is also a text file. So I'm going to bring that in. And straight away, you see it's a much more simple view. We've got a date for the BME target to apply and the value for the target that we should be hitting. Now, this figure should be percentage, but that's okay. We can change it a little later on. So let's go back and figure out where we're at as a business and how we can mesh these data sets together. So we're going to look at how our BME representation has changed over time. So we're going to look at across the months, our percentage of BME, which is a pre-done calculation that I've done for this view. Okay, super. So first off, we're well above the national average. We're between 35 and 40% BME representation in our company. So we're feeling pretty satisfied with that. But what about our own internal targets? Are we hitting those, or how are we getting on? And that's where we need the input from our targets data set that we've just drawn in. So let's go ahead and grab the BAME target here and pop that into the view. Okay, perfect. Another example of Tableau not liking what we're doing, but helping us to solve the problem. So here, we're trying to mesh together fields from two different data sources, but we haven't told Tableau how to do that. So it's flashing this message saying, hey, help me help you. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to go into data, edit the relationship, and just make things a little clearer, a little easier for Tableau. So original data set is this one. The one that we want to establish a relationship is the targets. And let's go ahead and mesh those common fields together. So we're going to go for the month of the report, and that's similar to the month of the target. And we'll OK that. Brilliant. So you can see that we have the target view now successfully in place. We also have our internal representation of BME in place. A better view would be to get those on the same axis, so let's go ahead and do that. And just make sure they're referencing the same 0 point and the same scale. And let's get rid of that as well. So nice. We've got two different data sets meshed together, operating at the business level, no more granular than that. You can see that we're well ahead of our BME targets, but over time, that gap is starting to close. So perhaps in the next 3 or 6 months, we want to think about our workload planning and our manpower planning. So how we're going to retain our BME talent, how are we going to recruit more to make sure that our targets are right and that we're always meeting those. So very quickly, again, valuable insights that will change our business decisions from one or multiple data sets at different levels of detail. Great stuff all around. Now, we're going to look particularly at some sickness, absence data from my organization, where I'm interested in figuring out what the patterns are in absence through the year. Why do we see lots of people taking days off? And is there a way to manage that? Well, I can very quickly get a broad idea of what's going on just by using a technique called the heat map in Tableau. So first off, I'm just going to grab the weekday that the absence starts on. And I'm also going to grab the month that the absence starts on. And let's make that grid view slightly larger. And I'm interested now in seeing how many people start their absence on a particular day of a particular month. So again, let's use the employee ID for this. Okay, so this is the start of our view, but again, visually, it's not saying much. There's too much text on the screen to be able to gain any insight from this. So instead of using text as a way to encode the data, I'm going to use color instead. And to do that, I just need to make a couple of changes in the view. So let's mix that up. Okay, great. So as my broad intro visual, this is much better. I can see that Wednesdays in March, a big day for people starting their absences. Mondays in November, this square here, the darkest color, another big day for people starting their absences. Now, of course, you've got to be sick and start your absence on one of the days. So this may not represent any underlying features of the business. However, if you put it in the context of what's going on within your business, in March, do you have particular deadlines? Are you gearing up for the start of the new financial year and people under pressure and maybe are grabbing a day off to recover? Likewise, November, do you have big deadlines that people are just being kind of steamrolled by? Or is it just the case that there hasn't been a public holiday for a few months and maybe you got a problem with people taking a day of absence to have a long weekend in between the summer and Christmas? All these things are part of that deeper story that using this data visualization uncovers. And generally, we can ask more questions from using these than answer questions. So we think about putting it in the context of the business, targeting analysis in different areas. We can also look more deeply in our data set for absence. So we're not just looking broadly, now we're looking at very specific detail. So let's have a look at variables being related to each other, maybe the duration of absence. So we'll start with that. And we'll just have the average duration of our absence. And let's have a look at whether the distance that someone lives from work plays a part in how soon they come back to work after absence. So let's drop this in, and that gives us one data point for the entire business. We're going to burst that point using employee ID. So let's drop that in. Okay, great. So looking at this metric, it doesn't really appear that distance from work and the duration of absence are connected. At short distances and long distances, we have short, medium, and longer term absences. So maybe as a metric on its own, it's not directly linked. How about another, like the proportion of people who are hitting their targets? So let's swap those out and drop that into the view. Okay, again, a couple of things that this type of analysis illustrates. Number one is we're feeling pretty chuffed that most of our employees are hitting their targets on average more than 90% of the time. So that's good. In terms of whether that's playing a role in the duration of their absence, it doesn't seem to be. Because again, we have short, medium, and long-term absences all occurring along that same target value. Potentially, I might want to check in with this employee here because they're hitting target rates slightly lower and they've got a higher absence, duration of absence. But across the business, this probably wouldn't be driving a particular policy. So it's this type of exploratory analysis that allows us to say, hey, we don't need to spend 6 months looking at distance from work. Or, hey, actually, we need to do that, but we also need to introduce these 3 or 4 or 5 different metrics because they're all interplaying together. It's that type of stuff where we can dig deeper into the business and find out the whole story. And of course, these views that we've made do form part of the larger story in the business. So what we need to look at next is tying them together in some kind of dashboard, which we can do pretty quickly here. So I'm going to do that now for us. So let's drag in first off our overall headcount and then our diversity profile. So that's great. And let's think about also where we're at with sickness. So let's put in both our sickness charts and take a look at where we're at. Drag that across. Okay. This is a very quick, very rough dashboard putting together those 4 views. And of course, there's much more to the creation of a really good dashboard, one that's clear, one that guides the user through the story, and one that allows them to interact with the data, to ask different questions. So let's expand a little bit and take a look at answering some other potential business questions with different dashboards. So in true Blue Peter fashion, I have some I've made earlier for you. And let's begin with this kind of standard monthly reporting where we're looking at manpower, at headcounts, absence, at diversity. And you can see across the top of my dashboard, I've got those key headline figures that applied this month, my headcount, my absence rate, and also what that's costing me, and a little snapshot of my diversity profile. Underneath each of those metrics, you can see that I've got an arrow and then another figure, and that's linking up our current month situation and reflecting back on how that's different to last month. So I think, hey, at the business level, my current absence rate is 3%, but that's up nearly 3% from last month. So I'm thinking, that might be a problem. How do I fit that into the context of absence over time? I've done that just by this technique called Biz and Tooltip, which just makes another chart view available when I hover. So you can see within the context of absence rates over time, that 3% and that growth from last month, actually that sort of fits with the cyclical pattern of absence over time. And not only do we have this available across the entire business, but we can filter through to look at particular areas of the business, and again, what their headcounts are and their absence rates, and what they're costing us in terms of absence rates. In the bottom half of our dashboard, we're able to put each department in context with the others. So you can see that these radio buttons on the left-hand side control which metric that you're looking at in the central chart, and also which metric you see trending in the right-hand side of the dashboard. Here we have our head counts and production. Again, a big hitter for head count. We have our absence rates. I've got two metrics here. One that is just the raw cost of sickness per month. So of course we know production has a high value, but because we know that production also has a large head count, we've created this secondary metric which corrects that sickness cost for the population within each area of the business so that we can have a baseline that we can compare across. So when I showed that metric, you can see that actually per head, it's the exec office absence, which is costing us. So those are our little subtleties that might be driving certain strategies so you can tailor your approach towards different areas of the business. Along those lines, and looking particularly at the sickness reasons, we've got this second view where I've broken down absence by short and long term in the top left at the entire business level, and in the top right, how that translates across each of our departments. We're seeing that almost exclusively it is short-term absence where we're losing days in our departments, with the exception of our admin offices where it's exclusively long-term absence. So again, a way to flag up and tailor an absence strategy towards the different areas of the business. In the bottom left of our chart, we're looking more at the specific reasons that people are giving for absence. So in my business this month, it's musculoskeletal, which is where we're losing days. Last month, it was allergies. So a lot of hay fever sufferers in our business. On the right-hand side, we also get a look at those absence reasons broken down by the department, and those are highlighted in orange when we pick a reason. So for musculoskeletal, the particular department that it's hitting hard is IT. We also have absence there in exec office, in production, and in software engineering. If I make a different selection, let's go mental health, you can see that it's IT and production that absence reason is affecting this month. Admin offices, our exec, our sales, software, they don't have any mental health absences this month. We can see that in each particular department, we're showing the average number of days lost. So for that particular absence reason for mental health, if someone was off in production, they're off for about 20 days. For IT, it's 12. So it's illuminating a little more of the subtle details that help you to tailor things. And before you saw that we had snapshots of diversity, we had gender and ethnicity. So in this final view, from our routine reporting, we can take a look at how our diversity profile changes through the business, with the left-hand side showing us the diversity broken down by our departments, the central chart showing us the age profile of those groups, and the right-hand chart showing us the salary profiles. So I already know from my snapshot figures that we're not doing too bad in terms of the overall numbers. So with our gender profile, it's nearly 50% female. With our ethnic origin profile, we're sort of 35-40% BME. So we're not doing too badly in terms of getting those groups through the door and into our business. But once they get in, the salary experience is drastically different. If I pick out software engineering, perhaps, so we're on a 44-55-ish split for male-female, but that balance is not there at all in salary. In fact, our male software engineers are getting, on average, double what our females are making. So this is something that's going to make a difference in our retention of our valuable employees. So I want to think about perhaps doing something around this internally and figuring out how we're going to recruit and retain the best talent in both genders, and the same kind of idea for BME and white candidates. And it's these types of broad patterns and trends that warrant some further investigation, because this is just our monthly reporting board, and we're able to run this every month to see what's going on. So I do have some more examples of further investigation that we can highlight. And as we've looked at gender pay just then, let's have a look at a more specific example here. So this is set up to run for UPay data, but you could be applying this to your own organization. We split up the salary profiles into quartiles, so roughly quarters. You can read left to right. In the lowest salary bands, women make up the majority of that band, with roles like assistant or trainee. As we move up the salary bands, up those quartiles, you can see that the proportion starts to shift. Females drop off as we move upwards, and up into the top band, in the highest quartile, men are outstripping women. So in our C-suite roles, our chairmen, directors, VPs, we have a big disparity in the women getting those roles and also the pay that's evident in those roles. In the bottom half of our dashboard, we've done a little bit more breaking down the full-time average hourly rates of pay, and again, the part-time average hourly rates of pay. So we can look at what those figures are now for each full-time and part-time, and how they've changed over time, how the rates have changed. You'll also be aware that women are more likely to fill part-time roles. So we want to think about the context that this is highlighting. Even though women in the part-time salaries are being paid more, they're more likely to have that part-time role. So it's contextually important. And a final example to show that contextual importance is looking at a particular type of absence. So we're going to look at mental health absence. And we know that from our monthly reporting absence figures, for example, we know that we're losing days to mental health absence. That's what our numbers show. But we now have some survey data that's going to help us understand what our employees are actually saying. So here, at the top of the dashboard, we're just going to kind of brush over this top end because it's just setting up how the survey runs. You can apply this against your own organization. In the top portions of the dashboard, looking at who took the survey and when they took it. But at the bottom half is the stuff that we're really interested in. So our survey respondents, if we imagine this is our company, 46% of our employees are saying that they have some kind of mental health disorder. So this is nearly half of our workforce. So that's telling in itself. If we move further down, another key question, is mental health having an impact on your productivity at work? So again, joining the dots, we know that the numbers say that mental health is having an impact on attendance at work. What do our employees say? Well, we have people saying, yes, it does have an impact on productivity. And 56% of the people saying yes are people who said, yes, I have a mental health diagnosis. But the rest, that's coming from people who don't know that they do, or possibly think that they do, or people who say, no, I don't have a mental health disorder. So this is not an absence type limited to one particular group or one particular self-identified issue. It's happening across the board for all employees. It's a big issue. And when we think about how that issue is managed, unfortunately in this survey, we've got these questions at the bottom saying, hey, has your employer discussed mental health with you? The majority of people say no. Has your employer provided any resources about protecting your mental health or nourishing your mental health? No. So this is the part where we're joining the data with the context of our business and figuring out how we drive our policies, how we drive our decisions to improve our employee experience. This is where our gut gets replaced by our data and how we use that to more effectively make decisions.
Great, Adi. Thanks very much for that. I've just got a few questions. Now, many of these data sets are based in Excel or are actually coming from Excel. Perhaps the charts look a little bit more polished in Tableau, but what else is there that justifies putting the effort in to change our current tech habits?
Yeah, it's a really important question, because you do need to have that bump or that push, or that justification for why you would go through that process. And really, for me, from seeing the views that I've showed you today and having had the experiences I have, really there's no doubt that businesses need a visualization tool to move forward. Excel simply isn't able to dynamically and quickly generate the types of insights that you need. Not only that though, it absolutely burns the time of your staff, who every month are perhaps manually copying and pasting figures from one place to another, or who are living in a world of VLOOKUP tables and Visual Basic macros. So part of the real value is the ability to embed Tableau products in a wider automation process. So the amount of time that you're going to get back for your data people, or your analysts, or just the champions who are going to take this on, that's really important to remember in terms of the budget element. So from my experience in these two people teams, in the first, I took what was effectively 20 days of work every month. So 5 members of staff, roughly 4 days each. So we got that down to around half a day for 1 member of staff. I'm now repeating that process in another team that has only 1 analyst. So grabbing back his time is imperative. And once you have that, those people are back in play, ready to add value to your employee experience. It's really answering the business questions that help you move forward. Using Excel alone is really hindering that process.
Interesting. Can you describe how the pipeline works with respect to information transfer? How do people share what they've made or view what is important? Is it possible to do that securely, or do we still need to rely on email?
Yeah, again, it's a good follow-up question, because the automation piece is part of it, but there's a large portion of your consideration in taking on something new that's going to be centered around data security. Being in HR gives us an incredibly privileged look at the experiences of people throughout the businesses, and we deal with very sensitive information that we need to keep secure. Keeping the status quo, where we're working in Excel and sending material out to people on email every month, you've lost control of that data. There are no structures in place to protect the data once it leaves your machine. With Tableau, though, we have a suite of products that allow the visualizations that we've made today to be uploaded to a secure server. Users in your business then log into that server, and they can access certain views, only the views that you've allowed them to access. So that can be tightly controlled. We also have the ability to stop users downloading any data, so they're not able to take that data and use it for whatever they would like to do. We've got those access and control systems in place, so we're able to show that we're GDPR compliant, which from a legislative point of view is really important, but also from an employee trust perspective, that's the crucial point in taking your data strategy further.
Brilliant, Eddie. Thank you so much for your time. I do appreciate it. So, to the people who are still listening, if you're interested in learning more about Tableau, we host free beginner training sessions in our central London office. It's in between St Paul's and Bank. Now, afterwards, our team are going to send an email out with all the meetup page information, which displays all the different events that we run. Also, I've had a few questions through. We also will be sharing the slides as well. So it's a big thank you from me for joining. If you want to contact me privately, please message me at the email you see in front of you. And we do actually have a few questions that have come up. So let's just pull up this Q&A. So let's go through that. Let's probably ignore the top one. Okay, can Tableau visualize the rate rather than the count, AD?
Yeah, absolutely. If you have, I mean, my experience is that each HR department is following broadly the same metric, but the way in which it's calculated is slightly different across different businesses. But as long as you have a definition for the way that you want the rates to be calculated, we can absolutely do that.
Great, thanks for that. And then we've got another question here. How do you calculate sickness cost per head? Is this dependent on their salary or an average?
Yeah, another good question. In order to make it as reflective as possible on what's actually going on in the business, in this example, I'm using the actual salary that each person made. Obviously, this is dummy data that I've made up myself, but I've placed it so that we have a specific salary for each person for each role. So you're able to do that with your data as well.
Perfect. Thanks very much for that. AD and I are going to hang around for a bit longer in case anyone wants to type up any other questions. Apart from that, we're finished. So thanks very much for joining. Any examples of any old charts? That's a question we could take offline, Nikki, if you want to contact me. Okay, thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone.